What's up friends, glad you're back. Today I wanted to run through 5 nearly perfect ultralight gear items. These are pieces of gear that I absolutely love that I find myself coming back to season after season and year after year. Notice that I did say nearly perfect though, as I don't think that any piece of gear is perfect and there's always room for improvement, so I will note what I'd change or what I'd like to try out instead where applicable. And hopefully if you're in the market for some new gear, this will help you narrow things down a little bit. Up first is my Montbell Superior down jacket. This is a hoodless 800 fill power down jacket that weighs 7.1 ounces, and it's one of the oldest pieces of gear that I own that's still functional. At this point, it's probably 7 or 8 years old, and it's really no worse for wear. For the most part, it goes with me on every trip, even though it probably doesn't need to. It's kind of like a security blanket, if I'm being totally honest, and sometimes I wonder if by taking it, I'm really just packing my fears, especially during the summer. What I love about this jacket, aside from the fact that it's very light and super compressible, is that it's got really wide baffles, which helps eliminate cold spots. You'll notice that on some of the other ultralight down jackets, they have really skinny baffles, and each one of those stitches is actually a potential cold spot, whereas this jacket won't have that problem. It definitely used to be fluffier and smell better, but hey, I've actually never washed it. Overall, it's proven really durable despite having a very thin shell material, and I don't baby it at all. It does have a few holes in it that I got last year on my birthday. I may have had a couple of beers while tending the fire, but other than that, it's in great condition, and I've just been able to patch up the holes with Gorilla Tape, and it's not a big deal. If I could change anything, I probably would have gone with the Superior down parka instead, which has a hood. For the most part, I think that when it comes to clothing, if something has a hood as an option, it's usually good to get it as it's nice for layering, but I've been super happy with the hoodless version as well. Up next is my Mountain Laurel Designs Exodus, and if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that I absolutely love this pack. This is an 18-ounce frameless backpack that has a capacity of 55 liters. It's the same dimensions as the Mountain Laurel Designs 45-liter pack, it just has an extra long extension collar on the top so that you can put more stuff in there if you need to. It is sort of an odd pack since you don't normally see frameless packs of this volume, which is kind of a good thing just because with frameless packs you really don't want to be carrying any more than 25 pounds anyway. At that point it stops being comfortable and the shoulder straps start to dig in and that kind of thing. But I'd consider the full 55 liters on this pack to be just in case space. For instance, I could see where it'd be useful if you want to carry a bear canister inside of your pack for only a portion of a hike. Also, it's nice if you're an ultralight 3-season hiker that only wants to own one backpack, but you want to be able to carry extra insulation in the winter for shorter trips. If you're someone that would consistently find yourself using the whole 55 liters of space, you'd probably want to go with a framed pack instead, as you'd probably be pushing the 25-pound mark and your shoulders would start to hurt a bit. This happens to me sometimes when I load my pack up with all of my 3-season gear, food and water, and then a bunch of camera equipment on top of it. Overall, it's just versatile. It's not the most ultralight pack out there, and it's also not made for hauling a ton of gear, but it makes a great all-around pack that has a ton of extra flexibility if you need it. The build quality is superb, and part of why MLD packs aren't the absolute lightest on the market is that they tend to use slightly more durable materials than their competitors, and they're also known for having incredibly comfortable shoulder pads and hip belts. And with frameless packs, most of the weight is in those areas. Gear item number 3 is my MSR Pocket Rocket 2. This is a 2.6 ounce canister stove, and it's actually the first canister stove that I ever owned. I picked up this stove because there's certain times here out west where I can't use my preferred setup, which is the Trail Designs alcohol stove, because of burn bans. This stove has a very solid reputation for being good in wind, boiling fast, all while not using a ton of fuel and being reasonably lightweight. Similar to the MLD Exodus, it's a good generalist, and while it isn't the best in any one given category, you really can't go wrong with it. I recently gifted this to my fiance Lynn because she wasn't sure what kind of stove she wanted, and I was ready to try something new. And lately I've been using the BRS 3000T, which while super light, if I had to pick between the two, I would absolutely go with the Pocket Rocket 2 instead. And that's really for the reasons that I just mentioned. The BRS sacrifices boil time, wind resistance, and fuel efficiency in order to be the absolute lightest stove possible. Another good option here would be the Pocket Rocket Deluxe, which has piezoelectric ignition as well as better wind resistance, but as someone that values simplicity, the Pocket Rocket 2 is perfect for me. The only thing that bugs me just a little is that the top of the burner does tend to rust a little bit when it gets wet. It's really not the end of the world, as a thin layer of rust just protects the metal that's underneath, but just from a cosmetic standpoint, it's kind of annoying. Up at number 4 are my MSR Groundhog Steaks. At 0.49 ounces, one could argue that these aren't actually ultralight, but hey, it's my video. Also, steaks aren't necessarily the sexiest piece of gear to talk about, but they are undeniably important. And here's the thing, I am still on the same set of Groundhog Steaks that I bought like 7 years ago, and I absolutely abuse them. When I feel a rock underneath, I just hit them harder and eventually they go in, and I have not bent one of them yet. I have considered testing out the mini groundhogs, but overall I'd end up saving like a half an ounce if I were to do that, although they are a little bit less bulky in the pack, which is nice. That said, I am a big believer that stakes are one of those places where you don't want to cut corners. They're really of no use to you if they don't keep your tent or tarp standing in a little bit of wind, or if they break as soon as they touch a rock. And finally at number 5 is my Thermarest Neo Air X-Therm. This is a 1-pound inflatable insulated sleeping pad, and I have the older version, not the NXT, which they recently rolled out. This is the first inflatable pad that I purchased for myself. The only other one that I had used before was a self-inflating Thermarest from when I was a kid, and after years of abuse, I haven't had any issues with it leaking or anything like that. Also, it's only about 3 ounces heavier than the regular Neo Air X-Lite, but it has an R value of 7 as opposed to 4, so it's good for 4-season use. Personally, I've never found it to be overly hot in the summer if I want to take an inflatable sleeping pad, although in the summer I normally take a foam pad instead. I found that warmth, or overheating rather, tends to be a function of the temperature rating of my sleeping bag or quilt, not necessarily the pad that I have underneath me. That said, I don't usually camp anywhere super hot during the summer, and nights around here are usually in the low 50s during that time of year. And there you have it, 5 of the absolute best ultralight backpacking gear purchases that I've personally made. If backpacking gear is your jam, make sure to check out my fall gear list next.